we had an incident in New Orleans where the police got him.
The moment Ray J chose to share his tragic diagnosis with the world, it was not delivered with spectacle or drama, but with a quiet weight that immediately shifted the tone of everything people thought they knew about him. For years, audiences had come to recognize Ray J as an entertainer, someone defined by music, reality television, and a public life often surrounded by headlines, controversy, and charisma. But in this deeply personal revelation, the image of a celebrity faded, replaced by something far more human, a man confronting a reality that no amount of fame, wealth, or influence could shield him from. It was a moment that cut through the noise of public perception and forced people to see him not as a persona, but as a person facing one of life's most difficult challenges. What makes his story so powerful is not just the diagnosis itself, but the vulnerability required to speak about it. In an industry where strength is often equated with silence and image is carefully curated, Ray J's decision to open up represents a profound act of courage. His voice, at times steady and at times heavy with emotion, carries the weight of uncertainty, the kind that comes when the future suddenly feels less predictable, less controllable. It is in these moments that the reality of his situation becomes undeniable. Behind the fame is a man grappling with fear, reflection, and the need to find meaning in circumstances that no one can fully prepare for. As his story unfolds, it becomes clear that this diagnosis is not just a medical reality, it is a turning point. It forces a reevaluation of priorities, relationships, and the very pace of life he once lived. The fast-moving world of entertainment, with its constant demands and relentless schedules, begins to take a backseat to something far more immediate: health, family, and the fragile nature of time itself. In speaking openly, Ray J reveals how quickly life can change, how moments once taken for granted suddenly carry immense significance. Simple things, time with loved ones, quiet reflection, even the act of waking up each day, take on new meaning, reminding us all of the delicate balance between normalcy and crisis. There's also a profound emotional layer to his revelation, one that speaks to the internal struggle that often accompanies such diagnoses. The fear of the unknown, the weight of responsibility toward family, and the pressure of maintaining composure in the public eye all converge into a complex emotional landscape. Ray J does not present himself as unbreakable. Instead, he allows glimpses of vulnerability to surface, acknowledging the difficulty of processing such life-altering news. And in doing so, he creates a connection with the audience that goes beyond entertainment, a connection rooted in shared humanity, in the understanding that pain, fear, and hope are universal experiences. Family becomes a central theme in his narrative, grounding him in a way that fame never could. The presence of loved ones, offering support, strength, and reassurance, emerges as one of the most powerful elements of his journey. In these moments, we see a shift in perspective. Success is no longer measured by achievements or recognition, but by connection, love, and the ability to face adversity together. Ray J's story becomes not just about his own struggle, but about the collective strength of those around him, illustrating how support systems play a critical role in navigating life's most challenging moments at the same time. His openness sparks a broader conversation about health, awareness, and the importance of listening to one's body. His experience serves as a reminder that illness does not discriminate, that it can affect anyone, regardless of status or lifestyle. By sharing his story, he not only confronts his own reality, but also encourages others to pay attention to theirs, to seek help when needed, and to understand that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. It is through this lens that his revelation transcends the personal, becoming a message that resonates far beyond his own life. What stands out most, however, is a resilience that begins to emerge in the face of adversity. Even as he processes the weight of his diagnosis, there is an undercurrent of determination, a refusal to be defined solely by the challenges he faces. Ray J's journey becomes one of adaptation, of finding ways to move forward despite uncertainty, and of discovering strength in places he may not have previously recognized. This resilience does not erase the difficulty of his situation, but it provides a sense of direction, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is a possibility of growth, understanding, and purpose. That as the story continues to unfold, it becomes clear that this chapter of Ray J's life will redefine how he is seen, not just by the public, but by himself. It is a moment of transformation, one that strips away the layers of celebrity and reveals the core of who he is, a person facing life's unpredictability with honesty, courage, and a willingness to share his truth. In doing so, He challenges a narrative that public figures must always appear strong and unaffected, offering instead a portrait of authenticity that is both rare and deeply impactful. Ultimately, the power of Ray J's revelation lies not in the sadness of the diagnosis alone, but in the way he chooses to confront it. His story becomes a reminder that life is fragile, that time is precious, and that even in the face of tragedy, there is room for connection, reflection, and resilience. It is a narrative that lingers, not because of shock or spectacle, but because of its honesty, because it speaks to something universal within all of us. And in that honesty, we find not only empathy for his journey, but a deeper understanding of our OW. And as the weight of Ray J's revelation continues to settle, the story begins to shift from shock to reflection, from the immediate impact of the diagnosis to the deeper, more enduring questions it raises. What does it mean to truly live when confronted with uncertainty? How does one reconcile the fast-paced, high-pressure world of fame with the quiet, undeniable reality of personal vulnerability? These are the questions that now define this chapter of his life, questions that cannot be answered overnight, but must instead be lived through, moment by moment, with patience, courage, and honesty. That in the days following his announcement, there's a noticeable change, not just in how the world sees him, but in how he carries himself. The urgency that once drove his career begins to give way to a more measured pace, one that prioritizes clarity over chaos, meaning over momentum. The noise of the outside world fades slightly, replaced by a more internal dialogue, one that forces and confronts fears he may have never fully acknowledged before. It is in these quieter moments, away from cameras and expectations, that the true depth of his journey becomes visible. There is also a profound sense of reckoning that emerges, a revisiting of past decisions, relationships, and experiences through a new lens. Success, once defined by visibility and achievement, now feels different, more complex, more layered. Moments that may have once seemed insignificant begin to carry emotional weight, while achievements that once felt monumental are viewed with a more critical, introspective eye. This shift in perspective is not about regret, but about understanding, about recognizing how life priorities can change in an instant, and how those changes can redefine what truly matters today. The heart of this transformation is a realization that vulnerability is not something to be hidden, but something to be embraced. Ray J's willingness to speak openly about his diagnosis creates a space for honesty that extends beyond his own story. It invites others to reflect on their own lives, their own health, their own relationships, and the ways in which they navigate uncertainty. In sharing his truth, he becomes more than a public figure. He becomes a voice for those who may be facing similar struggles, a reminder that no one is truly alone in their challenges. Family continues to serve as an anchor, providing both emotional support and a sense of grounding that becomes increasingly vital as he navigates this new reality. The presence of loved ones offers not just comfort, but perspective, a reminder of what endures even when circumstances change. In their support, there's strength. In their presence, there's reassurance. These relationships take on an even deeper significance, reinforcing the idea that connection, more than anything else, is what sustains us in times of uncertainty. As the narrative unfolds, there's also an undeniable sense of resilience that begins to take shape. It is not loud or dramatic, but quiet and steady, a determination to face each day with purpose, even when the future remains uncertain. This resilience does not erase the challenges he faces, but it reframes them, allowing him to approach his situation with a mindset rooted in strength rather than fear. It is a subtle shift, but a powerful one, transforming what could be seen as purely tragic into something that also carries a potential for growth and self-discovery. The public, too, begins to respond differently. Where there was once curiosity or judgment, there is now empathy and understanding. His story resonates not because of his fame, but because of its universality, the way it reflects the fragility of life and the unpredictability of health. People begin to see themselves in his journey, to recognize their own fears and hopes in his words. This connection creates a shared emotional space, one that transcends celebrity and speaks directly to the human experience. That in the end, this chapter of Ray J's life becomes more than just a story of diagnosis. It becomes a story of transformation. It is about the shift from external success to internal understanding, from performance to authenticity, from uncertainty to resilience. It is a journey that is still unfolding, still evolving, and still deeply human. And as we continue to follow this story, we are reminded of something essential, that even in the face of life's most difficult moments, there is a possibility of clarity, connection, and strength. That even when the future feels uncertain, the present can still hold meaning. And that sometimes it is in our most vulnerable moments that we discover who we truly are, not as public figures, not as personas, but as people navigating complexities of life with courage, honesty, and an unwavering will to move forward. As the journey of Ray J continues to unfold, the narrative deepens into something even more profound, a quiet transformation that extends beyond the diagnosis itself and into the very core of how he understands life, identity, and purpose. What once defined him, fame, performance, public attention, begins to fade into the background, replaced by a more introspective awareness of what it truly means to exist in the present moment. The pace slows, not out of weakness, but out of necessity, creating space for reflection, for healing, and for the kind of clarity that only emerges when life forces you to pause. There is a subtle but undeniable shift in how he engages with the world. Conversations become more meaningful, less about surface-level interaction and more about genuine connection. The laughter remains, but it carries a different tone, one that feels more grounded, more real, less performative. In these moments, we begin to see a version of Ray J that is rarely visible in the public sphere, thoughtful, reflective, and deeply aware of the fragility of time. This awareness does not diminish his spirit. Instead, it refines it, allowing him to approach life with a renewed sense of purpose and intention. The emotional landscape he navigates is complex, layered with moments of strength and moments of quiet vulnerability. There are days when the weight of uncertainty feels heavier, when the questions seem louder than the answers. But there are also moments of clarity, brief, powerful instances where fear gives way to understanding, where the unknown becomes something that can be faced rather than avoided. It is within this balance that his resilience takes shape, not as an absence of struggle, but as the ability to move forward despite it. His story also begins to influence those around him in ways that extend far beyond his immediate circle. Fans, listeners, and viewers who once saw him purely as an entertainer now find themselves connecting with him on a much deeper level. His openness creates a ripple effect, encouraging others to confront their own fears, to seek help, to value their health, and to prioritize what truly matters. In this way, his journey becomes more than personal. It becomes communal, a shared experience that brings people together through empathy and understanding. There is also a growing sense of acceptance that begins to emerge, not acceptance in the sense of surrender, but in the sense of acknowledging reality without allowing to define the entirety of his existence. Ray J does not allow the diagnosis to become the only narrative of his life. Instead, he integrates it into a broader story, one that includes growth, connection, and the ongoing pursuit of meaning. This perspective allows him to retain a sense of control, even in circumstances that often feel uncontrollable. Family remains at the center of this evolving story, their presence acting as both a source of strength and a reminder of what truly endures. In their support, he finds stability. In their love, he finds motivation. These relationships take on an even deeper significance, reinforcing the idea that, in the end, it is not the public achievements or the external recognition that define a life, but the connections we nurture and the impact we have on those closest to us. As time moves forward, the narrative of Ray J's diagnosis becomes less about the initial shock and more about the ongoing journey, the daily choices, the small victories, the moments of reflection that collectively shape his experience. It is a story that continues to evolve, one that resists a simple conclusion because it is still being lived. And perhaps that is what makes it so powerful, its honesty, its openness, and its refusal to be reduced to a single moment or headline that in the end, what we witness is not just a man facing a difficult reality, but a human being redefining what it means to live fully in the face of uncertainty. His story reminds us that life does not pause for hardship, but neither does it lose its meaning because of it. Instead, it becomes richer, more intentional, more deeply felt. And through his willingness to share this journey, Ray J offers something invaluable, not just a glimpse into his own life, but a reflection of our own capacity for resilience, compassion, and growth in the face of life's most challenging moments. As the story moves even further into its most reflective and emotionally layered phase, the journey of Ray J begins to take on a meaning that reaches beyond fear, beyond diagnosis, and into something quietly transformative. What once felt like an abrupt and devastating interruption now evolves into a continuous process of redefining identity, purpose, and the very rhythm of life itself. Each passing day becomes less about what was lost and more about what can still be held onto: time, connection, presence, and the ability to keep moving forward even when the path ahead remains uncertain. There's a growing awareness in the way he carries himself, a sense that every moment now holds weight. The smallest experiences, conversations, laughter, silence, are no longer taken for granted. They become markers of life's fragile beauty, reminders that meaning is often found not in grand achievements, but in the quiet, fleeting instances that make up our everyday existence. This shift is subtle, yet profound, transforming how he sees not only his own life, but the world around him emotionally. The journey continues to unfold in waves. There are moments of strength that feel almost unshakable, followed by moments where vulnerability surfaces in ways that are impossible to ignore. Yet, instead of resisting these emotions, Ray J begins to embrace them, understanding that they are not signs of weakness, but essential parts of the human experience. In doing so, he allows himself to be fully present in his reality, neither denying it nor allowing it to consume him completely. What becomes increasingly evident is a shift in how he defines success. The metrics that once mattered, visibility, recognition, momentum, begin to lose their dominance. In their place emerges a new set of values: peace of mind, emotional clarity, physical well-being, and the strength of personal relationships. This redefinition is not immediate, nor is it easy, but it is deeply significant. It reflects a transition from a life driven by external validation to one guided by internal understanding, a transformation that reshapes not just his priorities, but his entire perspective. The influence of his story continues to expand, reaching people in ways that go far beyond entertainment. His openness becomes a source of encouragement, a reminder that even in the face of deeply personal struggles, there is power in honesty. People begin to see their own fears reflected in his journey, their own questions echoed in his words. And through that connection, a sense of shared humanity begins to emerge, one that transcends status, background, and circumstance. Family and close relationships remain a constant source of grounding, providing stability in a time where so much feels uncertain. Their presence offers not just support, but a reminder of continuity, of the parts of life that remain steady even when everything else seems to shift. In these connections, Ray J finds both comfort and purpose, reinforcing the idea that love and connection are among the most enduring forces we adopt. As this chapter continues to unfold, it becomes clear that this is not simply a story about illness. It is a story about awareness, about the way life can change in an instant and yet still offer moments of meaning and growth. It is about the ability to adapt, to reflect, and to find strength in places that may have once gone unnoticed. The diagnosis, while undeniably difficult, becomes part of a larger narrative, one that includes resilience, transformation, and the ongoing search for understanding. And in this extended continuation, the story of Ray J stands as a quiet but powerful reminder that even in life's most challenging moments, there is still space for growth, for connection, and for hope. It is not a journey defined by its beginning, nor by its uncertainty, but by the way it is lived, day by day, moment by moment.